You would kind of think that entertainment journalists could do a little bit of math, especially when that math is simple. So when you see them making huge mistakes that then get disseminated all over the web, well, it gives you pause to wonder why that is. When it comes to that is today, we're talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a film that we have talked almost to death, except that it was already dead when it hit box office theaters. Well, it seems that the trades did not get that memo now. They're saying that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, that it only lost a little $100 million. Just $100 million. And, well, surely that means that those future Lucasfilm Star Wars films, they'll be okay too, right? Right? It's the pandemic, right? Oh, wait, no. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video of excellence here on the WDW Pro channel. It is a pleasure to have each and every one of you share your time with us, and it is a pleasure once again to have Culture Casino sharing his time as well. Culture, welcome back to the channel.
Well, thank you for having me, Pro. I love being here, and it seems like we're going to talk about something fun.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk about something big, something very big, something that failed, shall we say it, bigly. All right, Culture, but what we're looking at is a media that seems to be in protection mode when it comes to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, I know this seems like old news, right? But it's back in the news. And why is it back in the news? Well, because Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny, in just a few days will begin going to streaming for PVOD. And so people can pay money now to watch Indiana Jones on their little screens when they would not pay money to watch it on the big screens. I don't think that's going to play out, but that's the hope, I suppose, and it springs eternal. So they're going to try and defend Lucasfilm. They're doing this, Culture, at the same time that Lucasfilm essentially will not defend itself. It's been on a communications lockdown. We have not heard from Kathleen Kennedy in months, other than a blurb in a press release that gave us about 2 sentences on Ahsoka. We haven't heard from any of the other executives at Lucasfilm, so silence out there means Access Media kicking gear. Here's what we've got out of ScreenRant by Cooper Hood, who, by the way, is probably a great writer. And we're going to talk about where these numbers come from in just a moment. Indiana Jones 5's $100 million box office bomb means Lucasfilm's Star Wars movie plan can't fail. Now, the premise here, the setup here, is that Indy lost $100 million, and that $100 million loss indicates that Star Wars might be more risky than they thought. Of course, this is a huge undersell. We'll talk about that. Lucasfilm's Star Wars movie plan was already viewed as a risk, but Indy 5 losing $100 million at the box office means they cannot fail. Well, they can fail. The implication is they better not fail. Indy is a box office failure, and its performance means Lucasfilm's Star Wars movie plan cannot fail now. Lucasfilm brought back Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones for a final adventure in 2023. I'm not sure it was an adventure, maybe more like a shuffling, with the expectation that James Mangold's movie would end the franchise on a high note. Reality set in once Indy 5 premiered to negative reviews, and while its Rotten Tomatoes score improved over time, thank you, Mouse. Thank you for serving up straight-up hard liquor to the every Rotten Tomatoes person that you could possibly pull into your Burbank theater. That's how that happened, folks.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, the movie's box office never fully recovered from an underwhelming opening weekend. Is that what killed it? It also did not help that Lucasfilm allowed the budget to balloon to around $300 million reportedly. That's not the actual number. Folks, if you go look back at our reporting, which was then later on corroborated, it is $332 million. And then later on, we have even been told now that that doesn't include some of the post-production stuff and perhaps the reshoot of the ending. So it could be around $350. All right, now, it's made less than $400 million, blah, 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 blah. Now, Culture, the reason that I bring this up, we're not going to get into all this stuff, although I do like that ScreenRant is finally reporting on some of the same things we've talked about. You know, they're talking about Willow being a failure. They're talking about Star Wars is no longer a guarantee. Well, it may actually be closer to likely fail when you put out a Star Wars piece now. But we're not going to get into all of that because that's not the focus of this video. But when I was looking at this article, I noticed that there are a plethora of articles all over the web right now that reference this $100 million loss by Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And in my mind, I thought, well, why are they all using this $100 million when that's not at all the loss? And I had to find out where that came from. But before we get into where this $100 million number came from, Culture, are you surprised now that I don't want to call ScreenRant the mainstream, but the access media and the bloggers out there, are you surprised that they're starting to now articulate what we've been saying for years and years about Lucasfilm?
What's funny is I'm not. I'm surprised they waited this long to actually corroborate what we've been reporting for so long, to be fair. And the reason is I suspect that they don't have any choice but to tell the truth, especially since, everything's being borne out in public in what I now call our version of the Super Bowl, which are these earnings reports. I mean, you've been a part of the coverage of many of these events, and so people gather around to see just how poorly or how well these media companies do instead of actually going to see their entertainment. In fact, I've got some media coming out about that. But it's very interesting to me that they're also being very crafty in how they are reporting it, because as we'll get into in a moment, I'm not certain those numbers are 1000% accurate. I will say this, that the way the headline was written over there at ScreenRant, well, that's a little suspect because it could be read two different ways. And I think they leave those types of things intentionally vague. And I think that you repeat a lie enough times, people will actually believe it. So if you get a lot of people to think that it only lost $100 million, you do that through repetition of, said lie.
Exactly. And then the strategy here, I think, and we're going to go to why I think this is an overall industry strategy, but the strategy, I think, is to admit that it lost the money, but mitigate the damage that truth telling will do to you by mitigating exactly how much it did, right? And then at the same time, you're saying you put out a statement that can be read both ways so that your readers see it and go, oh, well, Star Wars is fine. Indy only lost $100 million. Those crazy YouTubers, they were telling me it lost, historic amounts of money. But look what ScreenRant says. It's all okay. It's because of the pandemic. If this hadn't been in the pandemic, the budget wouldn't have been so high. It only needed to be $100 million less, and then they would have made money. Indy's fine. That's the idea, I think, that's being played out here. Fair enough, Culture?
Fair enough.
All right, well, let's look at where this number originally came from. So, folks, this is why I think that this is actually an industry strategy, is because this comes out of the trades. Specifically, it seems to have originated out of Variety. So let's talk about that. And funnily enough, when it comes to this, it also seems to have been a way of correlating the losses of Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning so that they look the same. They look to be losing from the same audience. And, that's just not true at all either. So let's figure out how this correlation and conflation did not go so well. This by Rebecca Rubin, who usually we like, Brent Lang, and Matt Donnelly. Big budgets, big headaches, why Indiana Jones 5 and Mission Impossible 7 are struggling to make a profit. Let's find out what they say and where this is at. Not even time-tested adventurers like Indiana Jones and Ethan Hunt are immune to the shifting sands of the movie business. Now, before we go on any further, let me say that the loss amounts for these two films are vastly different. So while I'm here to say that Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning has not yet made money and may not ever make money, that is far different than the historic flop that is Indy. But there's a reason, I think, that they're trying to make these look like they're one and the same. Indy 5, which opened in late June, has grossed $375 million globally after 6 weeks of release, while Mission Impossible 7, which debuted in July, has generated $523 million after 5 weeks of release. Those ticket sales are respectable in the current movie-going landscape, especially because the films are part of decades-old properties aimed at older audiences. Now, one of the things that they're not going to explain in here, Culture, is that Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny, once it leaves the box office, the reason this is so bad for Disney is that once it leaves the box office, there is essentially no market for it. I mean, they're going to put it out there to be offered for anybody who wants to pay to have it streamed. That is going to be minuscule.
Yeah.
And then that's it. It goes to Disney Plus, and it makes no money on Disney Plus at all. Whereas with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, it goes into various contracts with streaming platforms so that it can be played and make money. And so that's the big difference here, is that one finishes its run at the box office and one doesn't. But here's the big faux pas, the big error that they made. The trouble is that each sequel cost roughly $300 million before marketing spends of at least $100 million, making them among the most expensive movies of all time. After falling short of expectations, they could lose nearly $100 million in their theatrical runs, according to sources familiar with the financials of similar productions. Now, Culture, I have a theory here on what they did because I can see the numbers sitting in front of me. This is really funny. It looks to me like they said, well, these movies both cost $300 million, and they cost $100 million to market, and they made about $300 million at the box office. So that means they lost the $100 million they spent on marketing, which is such a juvenile, elementary kind of mistake that it's strange credulity that they actually could have made that mistake at the trades. Surely they're not that naive as to how the industry works. Culture, do you think that they were fooled by this, or do you think that perhaps they know that the studios only get back half of what they make at the theaters?
Well, they certainly know it's willful deception at this point. They're trying to deceive their audience and their readers. And they look, many of these trades recognize that a lot of other people that aren't in the industry read them, especially when it comes to film. And so they're being willfully ignorant of the math behind the losses here and exactly what this film not only cost, but just exactly how much it lost. And that has to be like I said, that has to be willful. They're doing it on purpose.
Well, let's take a look at this quote. This is, I think, really telling. This from Sean Robbins over at Box Office Pro. These movies would have been a lot more economical if it weren't for COVID. But even that meant their budgets were inflated. At the end of the day, these movies cost what they cost and perform how they perform. But you've got the excuse at the beginning there, right? The statement here, I suppose, that you're supposed to pick up from implication is that if these films had released without the pandemic, they would have made money. Now, for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, that's a stretch, but maybe. I don't know that on the revenue side it was impacted. On the expenditure side, it certainly was. But for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, this movie has lost so much money that there's no way that just the pandemic alone can explain it. So
they're taking things as a given, though. I mean, there's a lot of givens here from the very beginning of the article that I wasn't going to mention, but I'll bring in here now. They're saying that an audience that appeals to, or excuse me, a film that appeals to an older audience is the problem. That was one of the main excuses that they threw up there, I think, in the first two paragraphs.
And that's the improper conflation, right?
Indeed, it's one of many, but that one is, well, Top Gun Maverick is a $1.5 billion or just under $1.5 billion performing film that's appealing to an older audience. That was back in my, I guess, high school years, my early college years. That film was out there in the world. So when you look at that and the audience, which is me, we had no problem going to see that movie. So we would have no problem going to see a good Indiana Jones film. The film was just bad, and the audience knew it was going to be bad, and Hollywood knew it was going to be bad, so it didn't perform well. Also, interestingly enough, if you look at that older audience, they're going to go out and buy physical media. How do I know that? Because I know that Top Gun Maverick has earned over $50 million in DVD and Blu-ray sales on top of the essentially, I guess that's what makes it about $1.5 billion is the extra $50 million that they're getting from this. So when I look at these things and I listen to what these writers and the third point I want to make is I'm quite frustrated that we need 3 authors to write one article.
And it's not even a huge article. I saw that too. And you know what that indicates to me, Culture?
Yeah.
This is article by committee. And what do we know about articles by committee? They were often handed a topic and said, get this, regurgitate this in the way that we need it.
Yeah, and it's strange because you have 3 people, probably adults, probably educated folks, as most people in journalism are, and not 3 of them could do math. Not one of them.
They can do the math. They don't want to do the math. So why don't we do the math? You want to do the math?
Good. Yes, let's do it.
Let's do some math.
No.
All right, folks, take a look at this. We're going to make this really easy. If you were concerned and you said, "Oh crap, I took remedial algebra in college and couldn't do it," it's okay. This is really, really simple. Okay. And it's going to show you why we think that the folks who are writing these sorts of articles, they have to be aware. They just have to. All right, so here's the math behind Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny, and how much money it has made versus how much it lost. So let's add it up first. This film, we believe, had something like a $350 million actual spend on its production. But let's be as kind as possible, and let's say it's only $300 million, okay? $300 million is less, we think, by far, but $300 million it is. Now, we also think that the very lowest amount possible amount for marketing was $100 million. We think that's higher. Probably significantly higher, but that's the lowest it could possibly go. Let's add them together, and what do you got? We've got $400 million in total marketing and production. But again, we are lowballing this big time. But let's do it, okay? Now, with these ridiculously unlikely low numbers, we still arrive at $800 million that the movie has to make to be profitable. Now, how do we arrive at that, Culture?
Well, it's quite simple. During a theatrical release, you have to, essentially compensate the parties that are showing the film during the exhibition process. So you basically divide what is earned in half, and that gives you your actual collected gross revenue.
That's right. After the big guys, Uncle Sam, take their money, the taxes and all that, and after the theaters get their money, these distributors get half of that back. Essentially, it changes a little bit depending on where you're releasing, or a lot sometimes if you're releasing in China, where they take basically all of it because they have a different form of government that we don't often talk about in these articles. But hey, let's keep going on this. Now let's look, okay, on the numbers. Here's what we say. Domestic and international combined, how much has it made? $370 million. 370. All right. So they're getting back half of that, folks. What does that put us at? Well, it puts us at about $185 million that Disney has made back. 185. Now, we know that Disney spent at least, and this is still ridiculously low for what reality is, but at least $300 million on production. That means it has currently lost $120 million there. Then we also know that they spent at least $100 million on marketing. That puts us at $220 million. And folks, let's add reality into the math now, okay? Let's say that somewhere, some way, we were a little bit low on this. And just for the sake of easy, let's put it on easy street at $250 million lost. That's the minimum, okay? 250. So $250 million is the minimum loss that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has incurred, which, by the way, is more than double, by far, what these articles are running around saying over and over and over, because this is what was originated out of a trade. I think we have sleuthed this out now. Culture, this is how Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is, in fact, a historic flop.
Oh,
fair?
Indeed. Indeed. In fact, I would suggest, and again, you were being very kind. I mean, you were stretching the bounds of kindness to the ridiculousness. I still think this film lost $300 million, but that's just me. So.
Oh, I do too. There's no way it didn't. But we are here to be absolutely okay. And the reason I do this is because if somebody comes in and they are extraordinarily skeptical of us, I am telling you that I am bending reality to get it as low as I can. And I'm still at $250 million for a loss. So that really tells you, okay, so if we're bending reality to get to this number, imagine what they have to do at the trades to get it down to $100 million loss. All right? And for those of you out there who are like, well, it's going to sell a lot of Blu-rays and DVDs, and that's probably going to bring in a lot of money. No, it's not. Culture, how much are Blu-rays and DVDs selling? You just gave us a number on a movie.
I did. The best movie of, what, a year ago? Top Gun Maverick only sold $50 million worth of Blu-rays and DVDs.
Was that more or less popular than Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, you think?
Vastly more popular.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. So maybe Indy sells $5 to $10 million. And again, I think that's generous, because who's going to pay for this doddering movie when they can go to Disney Plus instead and just watch it? And that one time they're going to watch it. You don't have to have, like, who wants to see the director's cut? Who wants to see the behind the scenes stuff? Nobody wants to see that, because it's not even Harrison Ford doing the things. It's a stunt double. They CGI'd on top of him. So have fun with that. Maybe they could actually show him getting injured on the train and show the look on Kathleen Kennedy's face. I might pay for that one. I don't need to see Harrison Ford in pain. I just need to see the camera quickly pan over to Kathleen Kennedy after it happens, because that was her one job, is don't let him get hurt. It'll cost us a lot of money.
Yeah, actually, I would suggest that I would pay for the bonus features if they included all the reshoots, so I'd get to see the reshoots that they said they never did. So that would wouldn't you love to see how bad the ending must have been before they had to go back? I would.
Gosh, what an ending.
I would love to be right more than a few times on this film.
That's right. It would be great. One thing that's true though, they were not right when it came to the amount of money this movie lost. They have not been right at any point along the way. And watch closely, folks. When it originates with the trades, that's when there is some sort of edict out there, in my opinion. That's when they are trying to create a narrative. And frankly, I think that narrative is intended to make it more palatable that we get these Star Wars films out of Lucasfilm. Culture, what's your best guess on why exactly we're being misled on this one?
For exactly the reason that you said. They're desperate to try to palate cleanse everybody of what happened with the previous Star Wars films and television programs, and they want to get this new film out there. The problem is they're starting with the same failed position as they left the franchise with to begin with, and I'm afraid that regardless how low the budget is for the next Star Wars film, it will also be a flop. But I agree with you 100%. They're also in the midst of trying to promote Ahsoka, which I think a lot of people have some very low expectations for, shall we say.
Well, speaking of, we will be doing, of course, a special event live stream later today, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be celebrating channels out there. And wait a minute, Culture, you're on this list. We're celebrating you as well.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I know, right?
I'm excited. Actually, I've been excited for this for a few days since you said we were going to do it. So I think we're going to have a great time. We have some wonderful channels that have celebrated some huge milestones. Good friends that are doing rather well, and it is going to be a lot of fun to celebrate with them. Just exactly what we've all done together. So.
And then to complete the segue, folks, when we do this live stream, part of our coverage is going to be of Ahsoka as it gets ready to launch. We also have some big Marvel news as well, so we're going to be covering all of that. And we've got Disney World information. And it's so funny. I was trying to figure out where we were going to put this new information about Disney World, and the fact that it looks like the Florida state government is going to be bringing in an inspector general because of what's been found going on there. I tried to find a place to put it, and finally I just decided we'll cover it in the live show because it's too hard to cover it anywhere else. But
you call that? Are you going to call that Ticketgate, Pro?
Well, we don't want to get into it right here, folks, because it's really complicated. It's also not so complicated, but in some ways it is. But we're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars that potentially were inappropriately used for influence. But then, Culture, after we wrap up our celebration stream, Lauren Connor and I are going to watch Ahsoka as it comes out. We'll come back at 11 p.m. Eastern time tonight for a member-exclusive stream where we're going to review Ahsoka. That review will also be available tomorrow morning. We're going to find out, did Dave Filoni come through, or is Filoni on the serious hot seat at this point? This is, I think, the moment where if he doesn't perform well, you could see the Mandalorian movie in jeopardy. You could see all kinds of things happening. And perhaps that's why we're seeing these articles defending Indy, is because they know that the margin is tiny at this point, right? The margin for success has evaporated, and you either get that success, or I think Disney C-suite is going to be looking at Lucasfilm very, very closely.
Yeah. I suggest they already have been, but you're correct.
That's right. Well, we think there's a transition period coming, and we put that out there. We won't rehash it right here. But folks, needless to say, there is a ton of content coming your way on this channel over the rest of this week. We've got the fourth part of our DEI expose of Disney coming out tomorrow as well. Frankly, we just can't keep up. And there's so much more on the way. I can't wait to bring it to you all. Well, folks, if you liked the conversation, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. The conversation here has come to a close, but the commentary begins. Have you figured out that we've made some sort of error in the math? Please let us know, because unlike the trades, we are here to find the accuracy that we so love and enjoy. So help us out. If you think we got it wrong, tell us, and tell us now. We want to be right as quickly as we can be, but we think on this one that we've got it 100%. Let us know your thoughts, folks. We cover your comments. We care about what you think. And don't forget that the Pro Show is Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time each and every week. We're doing that special one tonight. Check it out, too. And wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, keep subscribing to Culture Casino, and keep having fun.
Say it ain't so. This just in. Disney lost money on another movie. Why, that can't be. I thought that John Lasseter fella over at Pixar was cranking out the latest hits, and Marvel was unstoppable, and Disney princesses were a thing, and Star Wars was a multi-billion-dollar money-making franchise.
I overheard you talking about Disney, and wanted to let you know you're really behind the ball. If you were getting great articles from thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel, you'd actually be ahead of the culture curve and have entertainment explained.